Welcome back to the Gracefully Wild Soul podcast. Today we are going to talk about motherhood and all the things that come with it. I want to share some thoughts, some, lessons that I've taken away from motherhood, and talk a little bit about the mother archetype and just, all the things that we go through in this phase or this season of life, whether you are a mother or you are not a mother. It is still something that we journey through together as women. So, yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about all the goods around motherhood. Welcome to the Gracefully Wild Soul podcast. I'm Kirsten, a mother and soul guide, and this is a space where your soul is witnessed and the frequency of your heart is felt. Together, we will have intimate conversations about the essence of life, the beauty of your soul's path, and our evolution as women and as mothers. Through channeled words, lived experiences, and the wisdom of nature's rhythms, the soul, and the sacred feminine, this is where the gracefully wild woman begins to rise. Okay, well, I'm actually recording this in advance. And so I did just return from a women's festival in Canada. And I was drawn to this festival for a lot of different reasons. But one of the reasons was the way that it was structured was about learnings and lessons and takeaways from different seasons that we go through as women. So it really used the triple goddess as kind of the structure on how to present workshops and information and just the overall layout of the festival. And so that was set up with a Maiden, Mother, Crone. And then they actually had a phase in between Mother and Crone, which I believe they called the Maga phase. For me, I really kind of associate it with the wild woman or the wild mother, depending on where you are, that in-between phase between Mother and Crone. But either way, there is this kind of in-between space. So this festival had all of their kind of offerings, their teachings, even the rituals and ceremonies based on these different phases and how we as women carry all of these seasons and phases, and not just even on like a broad scale of moving from this age to this age, but how we are always cycling through these different elements as we go through life. And so that was one of the reasons that I was really drawn to this festival. And the second being is that there was a place for me to bring my girls. And so this was kind of like an initiation for me and a bit for them of beginning to really bring them into the fold, into these teachings and these different views of how we not just age, but just how we live life, how we move through the seasons, how we are cyclical beings, and how we are deeply connected to nature and the moon and everything that is living and breathing, and just here as an energetic presence on this planet. And so I really wanted my girls to be able to witness this. I wanted them to see women gathering. I wanted them to understand what women can do together when we truly, truly bring our hearts and our souls to the table in order to create change, in order to grow, to learn. I mean, every single woman there was there to grow and evolve. And that is, that is incredible. And so I really wanted to gift that to my girls, for them to see the power of women together, the power of the matriarchy. And so it just got my wheels turning to talk to you a bit about my own motherhood journey and the archetype of the Great Mother, and just some kind of lessons and things that have come my way during my journey. When I was at this festival, I really began to anchor into the idea that I'm actually in this in between space. I'm in between kind of the mother season and the crone season. So I'm in this wild woman or this wild mother phase. And for me, let me just kind of like walk you through that before I dive into some other things. I've briefly kind of touched upon the triple goddess, the maiden, mother, crone, but let's just run through it together. And so we can understand these different cycles and these different seasons as we're kind of going into the details of it. So the maiden really is this time in our lives when we are young, and it's not necessarily defined by an age of like, yes, it starts at, essentially zero, but like the ending age is not super defined. To me, this is more of a individualized process. It is very much dependent on your cycle of life, and still also not just in like a kind of check the box, like, oh, I'm moving from maiden to mother, like I just became a mom, like I gave birth to a baby. It is this like energetic shift. It is this energetic kind of transition. And so there's no like defined marker, but essentially in the maiden phase, you're in this like student phase of life. You are learning from the outside world. You are gathering information. You're traveling. You're taking classes. You're meeting new people. You're understanding what relationships are or what they're not. You really just are in this kind of soak it all in phase of life. And eventually we move to this mother season of life. And so we have, the crescent moon on each side, and then we have this full moon mother in the middle. And the mother phase, whether you actually decide to bear children or not, is really about the fullness of life. It is the full moon. It is about this stage where you might be offering more of this nurturing energy. The maiden is seeking and the mother is holding. And look, that might be super triggering for a lot of you because the holding part can bring up so much. Yes, I would say that overall mothers tend to hold too much. And that is a societal, conditioning and actual literally putting the weight on mother's shoulders. But then there's also some choice in the matter of what we decide to hold. But we are a container. In this mother phase, we are meant to really turn inwards. We're meant to connect to our intuition, to understand our true voice and what it is that we are here to gather and offer to the world. So it's a different learning phase of life, but you are also a space holder. And so if you are bearing children and you are in this mother phase, that space is offered to your children. And hopefully it is offered to yourself. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. But it's also offering to your family, your ecosystem, like your immediate ecosystem. And then that ecosystem carries out. And we're learning to navigate that. We're learning how to hold space. We're learning what it is ours to hold and what is not. And so that's really this kind of middle stage that we work through as women. And then there is this in-between phase that we move to before we move to that crone phase, that final phase. And for me, I really resonate with the wild woman or the wild mother. And, I went to this workshop at the festival, and there was quite literally a workshop like on this phase of life. And we're talking about perimenopause, and we're talking about we're not quite this young mother, but we're not quite a crone. And in fact, there was a group ceremony in which we kind of like grouped together the different, seasons that every person was in. And so we had like the young maidens, like the little girls. Then we had kind of the menarche, the maiden. So there's a little bit of these layers to each cycle. And then we had almost like that kind of graduated maiden, not quite a mother. And then we had the mothers. And then within that, we had the mothers that were like carrying their babies. They're in this newer space of motherhood. And then we had the mothers that were, later on in their phase of motherhood, where they're not quite to the crone status, but they are in this new perimenopause, premenopausal kind of way of living while also raising young children. So going through this cycle in a different way. And then moving to that crone phase where you have the wise sage, you have the grandmothers of the group. But this wild woman, this wild mother, is this place where you are navigating new and different things with your body. It's kind of like if you remember when you had your child and you're like going through, God, I can't remember what it was. There was like an app. It was like this season and that season. And it was like, oh, I just finally got through this season. Then all of a sudden you're hit with a new season, right? It's like first you're in the rain, then all of a sudden the hail starts and you're like, wait, I just got out of the rain and now I'm in the hail. Like, what is going on? And so I think as the wild mother, or even the wild woman, if you are not actually bearing children, but you're still in this in between, you're just navigating your body and the lessons in a new way. It's not like you have completed the lessons from this mother season, this mother phase, but you are connecting with it differently and you're being offered some different views. And so there's more of this like rage that's involved, right? Like this frustration, like I've done this, I've done that. And, here I am, X, Y, and Z. And so there's just a bit of this kind of rawness that's coming out in this season, in this phase. And so I would say that's where I am. Hi, welcome. And then to kind of just close it out for the triple goddess and looking at the archetype of our cycles or seasons as women, we have the crone, and that is the wise sage, the grandmother. And she is really here to be the guide. She is the one now offering the wisdom to her village, to the people around her in her ecosystem. And so, we are moving through each of these stages on a micro level every day. Our menstrual cycle is deeply connected to the literal moon phases, syncing up every 28 days. And so we kind of move through these different seasons, whether you are still having a menstrual cycle or not, we do go through these phases in these 28 days. And so we're constantly living it. And so we have like this macro level, like for example, the wild woman would be like the fall, the luteal phase, and the crone is like the winter where you're actually in the menstruation phase of your cycle. And if we were rewinding, we're actually going in reverse. If you were the maiden, you would be in your follicular, so like spring, and then the mother is ovulation, it's summer. And so we're on a micro level going through these seasons, going through these phases, and then we're also going through it on a macro level. And so it's just important to remember that this is a gift. I know it's really hard sometimes where you're like, oh, I just got out of this season and I'm going to the next. But as cyclical beings, and quite literally as a physical format, as women, being able to go through these cycles, we're reminded that there's always an opportunity to start again. So that's my long explanation of essentially the archetypes of maiden, mother, crone, and just kind of the seasons that we go through. So coming back to the mother and really focusing on that archetype, motherhood and mothering, this phase, is really meant to soften us. It is a different lens. It is a portal to learning in a way that is not offered to everyone. It's not offered to everyone. And so I would say if you are childbearing and you are really in this phase of mothering children, your learning and your lessons are being experienced in a different way. Like it's just unique and special. And not everyone is in that learning portal that you are. And sometimes I think we can lose sight of that. It's like, I have it so hard and why me and X, Y, and Z and all of the things. Because yes, life can be really challenging and motherhood is hard as AF. Okay. It is hard AF, but it is so incredibly rewarding. It is soul filling. It is the ripple to change the world. And so I truly believe in the matriarchy and the power that it holds. But it is hard. And so the lessons that we are in this phase, this season, is really about softening. It is about learning to create space and hold space. And so our children are our divine mirrors. They are constantly teaching us where we need to look at ourselves, where we need to go deeper, where we need to maybe spend some time nurturing ourselves, loving on our own inner child, and maybe where those wounds sit deeply, where they have been forgotten about or pushed to the side. And so when our children are triggering us, with being children, with their beautiful growth, this is an invitation. This is an invitation for us to be able to look at ourselves, clear and create space in order to hold. And I think that times, certainly society can create the quite literal obligation and the impression that motherhood is supposed to be sacrificial. It is supposed to be servitude. And this is a far, cry on the spectrum. Motherhood is an offering. It is a service. But we are not meant to sacrifice, and we are not meant to be in servitude in this phase of life. And so if you find yourself looking at kind of that spectrum of, I'm in the constant of just give, 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 then the question you're being presented with is, where do I need to receive? Where am I choosing not to receive? Because let me tell you, that is hard. Receiving from mothers is incredibly hard. We live in a modern society that tells us that we, one, should do it all, and two, that we should be able to do it all on our own. And going to this festival, man, it's such a reminder that this is how life used to look. A community of hundreds of women, whether they had children or not, offered help. There was someone that came up to me that saw me with my girls and said, hey, my name is da-da-da, and I'm here, I'm helping out, and I see you. And if you need help with your girls, I'm here. Just ask. Right? Like, you guys, this is how the matriarchy lives. By seeing that we live in a spiral, we live in a circle, we live in a community. We are here to support one another. We are here to offer help because it is hard. Doing it alone is hard, and that's not how we are meant to do it. We are meant to be in community. We are meant to support each other. We're not meant to see each other as competition or look what she has. Oh, she can just juggle 1,000 things all on her own. Wow, how impressive. No. That is the lens of the patriarchy. The matriarchy says we are here. We sit in a spiral. We sit in a circle. We sit shoulder to shoulder among one another. We are here to love you and support you. And so your children are part of that circle. I do try to communicate with my girls when there are moments where I'm like, look, I feel overwhelmed. I feel like I'm in a challenge spot. And I want us all to know that we work together, that we are a team. I'm not here to just constantly give. We're here to be in relationship with each other. And relationships require us to not only give, but to receive. And to know that I am also worthy of support. obviously this is age dependent, right? So my girls are almost 10 and almost 9. And so if you are in a different phase of motherhood where you have much younger children, please call on your village. I know that's not easy because forming the village is hard in this world, but trying to put yourself in a place where that village is available, you will be able to find that it becomes easier and easier. And so, as mothers, we are in this season of realizing the fullness of life. And so that's why for me, going to a space like this, women's retreat, is seeing the fullness of all of that. There were mothers with their little tiny babies. They're sitting there cradling their babies, they're crying, they're feeding them, they're nursing them, they're changing their diapers, but they are there. And there are other women there to help support them. This is the fullness. This is the everything. And so motherhood, this, kind of mother season within the triple goddess, it's like a full bouquet of flowers. It really is the fullness of life, and we are collecting and gathering. And yes, we are holding, and we're learning to hold. That is part of the journey of this season. And so what I find in terms of like the energetic shift versus like the physical shift is when we move into this motherhood archetype or this, season, it's when we really begin to connect to our intuition. It's when we begin to listen to our inner voice, like our higher self, and we nurture that. And so all of these women at this festival, again, whether they had children or not, they were there to nurture that. They were nurturing themselves. They were allowing themselves to grow. They were giving themselves space to feel, to speak, to be in community. So when they left, when we all returned to our day-to-day lives, we created more space. We created more space to help others, to hold for others, to give what we have to give. But remembering that we always must be in a state of receiving as well. So that is kind of the overarching energetics of this phase of life. And I just want to touch on a few of the goddesses that are associated with this season. And then I'm going to drop into just a few lessons and kind of expand on those a little bit. So 3 of the goddesses that I often work with and connect with that have the mother archetypal energy include Hathor, Spider Woman, and I also connect with Mary Magdalene as a mother. And so some people might connect with Mother Mary, which is the mother of Yeshua, but for me, it's Mary Magdalene. So Hathor, she is an Egyptian mother goddess. And in fact, she has 2 sides to her. She has this, nurturing mother side, and she is the goddess of song and play and harmony. And she also has this lioness within her, Sekhmet. And there was a moment where the god Ra asked her to essentially, from how I read it, maybe seek a little revenge on his behalf, or at least seek out individuals that had harmed him. And she became so enthralled with rage that the world around the people began to suffer ultimately. And Ra asked her to come back into her state of motherhood, into this form of Hathor, the cow goddess, and basically kind of revoking his directive to do this. And when she did, the world returned to harmony and song and love and nurturing and bounty once again. And so I do think this story, her myth, is very powerful to understand that both sides of this way of living are important. It's not to say that rage or anger are shameful and that you're going to bring, the darkness upon the world. It is an important emotion. But I think that what we need to see from this is We can't live in that state all the time. And we must be able to, yes, feel and move through the power of that rage, whatever it is. But we need to be able to come back to our state of love and nurturing. And so honoring both sides of the coin, honoring both parts of the journey, because motherhood brings up rage. It brings up rage, not necessarily towards your children, but towards the concepts, the obligations, the duties, the to-do list, whatever it is, the frustration of it all, and society continuing to put it on. So this rage is present in the season of life. And that's something to honor, but it's not something to sit in. So the Spider Woman, she is the weaver of life. She created from her web the birds, the insects, the animals, the humans, the first man, the first woman. And it was actually a connection that I felt really deeply in communion with when I was on this women's festival. I saw spiders in multiple places at multiple times. And yes, of course, I'm in nature, but it's when you're looking to the left and you're looking to the right, and all of a sudden you just pause, and there it is. It's this moment of the universe showing you the signs around you. And I very much, connect with her and this idea of creation, of being the creatrix, and honoring all facets of life, which includes the constant cycle of death and rebirth. That is, again, these seasons that we go through, moving from our follicular season to our ovulation, to our luteal, to our menstruation, to move from maiden to mother, to wild mother, to crone. There is this death and rebirth phase always happening within us. And to honor that we are always evolving, we are always growing. And so that is an archetype or a goddess that I often work with. And lastly, Mary Magdalene. Historically, there might be some controversy on whether Mary and Yeshua, also known as Jesus, ever had a family or children. But from my connections with Mary and Yeshua, they did bear a child, and in fact, two. And so there is actually a handful of literature and archaeological kind of books and studies that follow this storyline, the bloodline. And in fact, if you ever read the Da Vinci Code or saw the movie, I mean, this is the basis of the story. Dan Brown quite literally took this story and, wrote a best-selling novel on it. But the line of the rose and their children live on. And so very much I connect with them as a divine couple and Mary as a mother. And even if they didn't have children, if that is kind of where you live in the sense of seeing, Mary nurtured and loved Yeshua like a mother. She tended to his wounds. She anointed his feet. She carried his message forward. She loved all just as she was shown by him. And these are the themes that we work through in motherhood. Certainly, so many people could see Mary's story as a story of sacrifice or servitude to a man. And I think certainly there are a lot of stories out there, including the Bible, that have been not painted in an accurate picture. But Mary, to me, and everything that I've connected with when I connect with her and channel her, is the purity of love and the purity of giving and receiving. Her receiving of his teachings, of his guidance, and carrying that forward. Again, for me, she truly embodies that mother energy. And so those are, three goddesses that I often work with when I do readings, either for myself, connecting with my own Akashic records, or I'm, doing a reading for someone else, or just channeling the collective energy. So, next time you are going through something in your motherhood journey, these are goddesses that you can call upon for support and love. They are here to do that. All right, let's drop in to a few little lessons because otherwise I'm going to keep going and this episode's going to be like 2 hours long. Okay, I wrote these when my girls went on a trip some time ago, and I just thought they were really potent and important to share because they can come and go at different phases of your motherhood journey. So, these are essentially 5 things that I've learned in motherhood from my children. So, going back to this connection, this relationship that we have with our children as them being sacred mirrors to what we are here to grow into, what we are here to learn about. And the first is patience. Wow. I mean, before I became a mother, I would say the number one thing that I felt challenged by, and look, don't get me wrong, I'm still challenged by this, was patience. Patience was incredibly difficult for me. I was a very impatient person. I wanted everything immediately right then. I wanted to be satisfied and I wanted to move on. And I would quite literally say I'm an impatient person. And so my kids have taught me so much about the resilience that we can find in being patient, and that there are so many good things in patience. And really what it comes down to is presence, right? Patience is about, like, again, looking ahead, like stressing about moving to the next thing, where true patience is really about true presence. Being fully in the moment allows you to ground into what's happening and not try to move past it or quicken it. I'm not always good at that, okay? I'm like, for sure, I'm like, girls, let's put some pep in our stuff, But overall, this is part of my learning, part of my lesson through motherhood. Number 2, imperfection is our craft. Ooh, okay. I was a type A. I'm a recovering type A person. I'm a recovering perfectionist, people pleaser, all the things. And so it is really hard to let go of in motherhood. And so to me, a craft is something that you build over time, something that you dedicate yourself to. And so accepting imperfection is truly life-changing when it comes to this season of life, because we have to accept that our house is not going to be perfectly clean. The dishes are not always going to be done, that the to-do list is going to continue to grow, that you didn't get, that one thing correct. You forgot to bring, a lunch for your little one, or whatever. You missed some sort of, I don't know, performance, whatever it is. But accepting that we are perfectly imperfect and that is completely okay is part of our craft in motherhood. And it's our sanity. Look, trust me, when the house gets to a certain point, I'm like, I am going to lose my mind. But I have worked really hard to continue to release expectations about order and perfection. And so it's an ongoing process. Okay, number 3, the necessity of self-care. I couldn't reiterate this enough. I honestly had no idea how to take care of myself before I became a mother. And certainly in my early days as a mother, I also did not know how to do that. In fact, I didn't do it. And I drained myself all the way to the bottom of the swamp. And so this has been something that I learned the hard way, that taking care of my body with movement, taking care of my soul through, my spiritual work, taking care of my mind by learning new things, and really just taking care of my emotional state by being able to express myself or move my emotions is everything. I cannot live without this. And so self-care is so important, and that can look like a million different things for you. For me, that is a variety of things. That is yoga, that is meditation, that is, the oils and the lotions that I want to put on my body to remember and feel beautiful inside and on the outside. It's rest. It's being outside in the sunshine, like walking, having a great beverage, like a matcha with a friend, visiting the ocean. These are all things that just fill my cup. And so self-care is absolutely quintessential to motherhood. Please, please, please continue to nurture yourself. It is not selfish. It is necessary. Number 4, compassion and humility. Okay, compassion and humility. So much here. There are so many opportunities to shame ourselves. There are so many opportunities to get down on what we maybe messed up or what we said wrong or what we did wrong or what we didn't do. And let me tell you, there is no greater medicine than compassion in motherhood, because we are absolutely, positively going to miss something. And we are going to feel it, and we are going to feel bad, and our kids are not going to forget it. Look, I obviously every day try my best. I try my best, and I try to up my game in whatever my best is. That to me is the growing and learning and putting myself in spaces that allows me to do that, that I'm not just accepting what my best is. I am constantly trying to raise the bar, but understanding that takes time and that I'm not always going to get it right. And I need to apologize, and I need to show feelings, and I need my kids to know that I'm human. I need to be recognized that I am doing my best, and I am trying, and I'm constantly trying to do my best without sacrificing myself. Okay. And the last piece I want to bring in, which I kind of already touched upon, is the power of community. Your village, your tribe, your friends. It is absolutely what allows us to thrive in motherhood. And that is what the matriarchy is all about. It is about us knowing that side by side, we can do this. We can move through it together. We can help each other. We can hold each other. We can support in whatever way that might be. And look, I haven't perfected this community in terms of my motherhood community or the matriarchy community, but I am constantly out there opening my heart, allowing myself to show up in places that feel super vulnerable, that feel scary, that, it's like meeting new people. Shockingly, sometimes is really hard for me. And in fact, I think it's gotten harder for me as I've gotten older. Putting myself out there has gotten a bit more challenging, but I keep doing it. I keep showing up, and we can do hard things. We can do hard things together. So remembering that community. Okay, I had more, and so maybe I'm just going to save that for another episode, because I think we're already at a point where it feels like a good closure. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm sending you so much love in whatever season or phase of life that you are in. I am honoring all of the mothers wherever you are, even if you are just simply in that season of nurturing yourself and you are not bearing children. It is something that we all carry. It is an energy, a love, an archetype, and I am sending you so much support, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. All right, bye. Thank you, love, for being here. May you walk forward guided by the wild wisdom of your soul and the truth of your heart. To find me beyond the podcast, you can join my newsletter at soulbabe.com for continual updates on offerings and other teachings, or subscribe to the Gracefully Wild Soul Substack. Until next time.